So I'm here tonight chatting with former top UK professional wrestler Dave Pownell, better known as Dave Rayne. How are you, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, buddy. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm as sane as I ever am under the circumstances, and yeah, ticking over, mate. One
That's
breath
good.
at a time, Dave. Um, we'll jump right into this. So I've been a massive professional wrestling fan like my entire life. How did you get into pro wrestling, and what was the initial attraction for you?
I got into it like as a kid, as most people do, probably like a fan. Just channel hopping one day. My next door neighbours had Sky, and we didn't. Very young. And I
That was a
just
thing
ran
back in
there.
the day, wasn't it? That was actually a thing. Having Sky TV was quite a thing back in the 80s, wasn't
Yeah, back in the day, like the one house on the block would have Sky TV, and everyone would go around to watch everything. Or they would record stuff for you and give you the tapes. And
That's it. Yeah.
so my next door neighbour had Sky, and I just ran there one day, and I found I turned over, and it was wrestling. I was like, oh my god! And it was Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter and Macho Man and all those classic kind of, that the big kind of era of wrestling. And yeah, then from that moment on, they would just knock on the door, and every week, here's a tape of the wrestling, here's a tape of the wrestling. And I was into it as a kid like that. And then it kind of took a back seat in my early teens where, things that you used to like aren't cool anymore, whatever. And then in my kind of like mid to late teens, I discovered Raw again. And this time it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And
Ah,
it was the Attitude Era, and I was just like, this is amazing. This
that's my
isn't a
favorite
cartoon
era.
anymore.
That's my favorite era of wrestling ever. But go on.
But it literally went from being like a live action kids cartoon to being like a live action movie now. It was
Yeah.
crazy. And so I was into it all the way through like the last few years of high school and college. I made some friends in college who were also into it, and one of them was like, "Oh, you like wrestling? Do you want to go and watch it?" I was like, "I'd love to go and watch it, but they're only in the country like once, twice a year. Like, we're never going to go see it. Like, when are we ever going to see it?" It's like, "No, no, no. There's British wrestling." I was like, "What?" And my first thought was, "What do you mean, like when they like it's called tribute wrestling?" And it was when you have like the UK Undertaker and like the Scottish Rock and all these other mad people who just attend
Scottish
it.
Rock. Nice.
Scottish Rock. And all this kind of stuff. And I was like, no, no, no. And he took me to London to watch a company called FWA.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had a show. And it was against an American company called Ring of Honor. So my mate, he'd show me some tapes, he'd show me some ECW, and he'd show me some Ring of Honor. And he was like, some of these Ring of Honor guys are going to be at the show, let's go. And I met a bunch of guys there who were from Wigan. On his t-shirts, the Garage Wigan. But there's like 6 or 7 of them on his t-shirts. I was like, what's this? Because they were Northern lads, and we were Northern lads, and we were in, the heartland of the South. It was like, oh, you talk like I do. Hiya, how you doing? What's this garage thing? And they're like, oh, it's gym. We teach wrestling. This is in Wigan, and I live in Stockport, like south of Manchester. And I was like, an hour on the train, you say? I can do that every week, no worries. And I just kind of jumped into it, and it was just something fun to do the weekends at first. Like, I had no big. I was never someone who was a kid who was like, I'm going to main event WrestleMania and I'm going to do this. It was no big. It was just, this looks like fun. This looks like fun. And then suddenly I realized that I just loved it, and I was living for that, because this school would only run training on Sunday afternoon that I could get to. But I was living for that Sunday afternoon, and I realized that I really want to do this. And then kind of opportunities came along to get in a ring and actually compete in front of people. Um, a school opened up in Manchester, so I started going there as well. And then eventually, after a few years there, the guy that ran it, Alex, was just like, he lives in London. He was like, I can't keep coming up. I've got these other opportunities. A company called TNA at the time wanted him to kind of be in charge of their UK tours and stuff. So we had a lot of like more like an office job really for them. That I can't come up every time now. So either close it down or someone can take over it. And I was like, oh, someone, okay. Now, so I just kind of inherited this wrestling school and these shows.
Dave,
Like
just before, come back to that point where you've inherited the wrestling school. What was Alex's surname? I remember him on the UK scene.
this was Alex Shane, he was
Shane.
called. Alex Shane,
Huge
the
dude.
show
Yeah.
stealer. Yeah, he was a really, really cool guy. Always had big plans and big dreams. And
He was pretty
knew everyone.
formative in sort of bringing British wrestling back. I mean, he really, during the sort of the time when British wrestling was not cool or popular or anything at all, him and a few guys really, really sort of kept it going, didn't they?
They did, yeah. So there was a whole period kind of the late 90s specifically, where what you saw in this country in terms of wrestling that wasn't WWE was people on caravan parks, and that was the mainstay. So it was like the caravan parks, and there would be like a circuit, like 6, 7 of these parks, and a car and a van with maybe like 5 or 6 wrestlers, and you would go around all summer doing like Monday, Tuesday, a show in each park each day, and it would be like tribute stuff. So maybe there'd be some guy who's tall, had long hair, so he'd be the Undertaker. He had some guy who was bald, so he could be Stone Cold, and they'd come out to that. And for the most part, that's what British wrestling was. It was an okay payday, but there was no scene, there was no one following it, there was nobody creating stars. It was borrowed interest. Yeah. So it was, like it was cheap. It was knockoff. Let's go. We're on holiday. Let's go watch the knockoff WWE guys. But then so Alex, a guy called Doug Williams, the anarchist Doug Williams, who
did a lot in TNA and Ring of Honor, didn't he? He was great.
He did. So he was like a forefront, like a flag bearer for British wrestling for a fair few years, and he's a pretty sound guy. But he was going to Japan and competing there, and then he was going over and he was the Ring of Honor world champion at one point. And he really was like, if you spoke about British wrestling, we were talking about Doug for a very long time. And then so he was he was in TNA with a guy called Magnus.
Nick Aldis, he's still wrestling now is he in the NWA now, Nick Aldis, I think. Last time.
Yeah, he is. In fact, last I heard, he was the NWA world champion.
Oh yeah, cool. I mean, Doug Williams, I used to love watching him wrestle. Awesome wrestler.
Yeah. Really. Doug was one of those guys who could just, like, his technical understanding and his ability to tell a story in a ring was amazing, and he could make so little look like so much. And his very demeanor was just like that quintessential British kind of very chill, very. He used to make me laugh because his gimmick was the anarchist Doug Williams, but there was nothing anarchistic about him at all. Like, I think it was just like a throwback to kind of British punk or something like that. Like, so I was just trying to create association there. But he was very much kind of did this great way of kind of straddling the old, because Britain used to be really famous for its distinctive style of wrestling. It's very mat based, very technical, lots of holds.
Well, a lot of the catch wrestling actually developed around like the mining town, like the real life legitimate catch bouts. They tended to originate in the mining towns, and it was a way of settling disputes between workers initially, and then they realised people started betting on the fights, on the bouts, and they realised they could earn more money with the wrestling than they were doing in the mines, so it became a thing, and that was when it was like the legitimate competitive catch wrestling. And it originated in Lancashire and Cornwall as well, where you had your big mining sort of towns. And then it sort of emigrated over to the States, and then it was picked up there by, Farmer Burns and all sorts of people, and it filtered through and it spread out from there. But yeah, I mean, Britain's got a big hand in sort of, I suppose the earliest stuff you've got on record, I would imagine, is the Greco-Roman stuff. But I mean, I guess they brought that over here when they came and, conquered. And I guess some form of that got passed down through the ages. And it goes back a ways, doesn't it? But yeah, the British on it.
Combat sport does, right? You can trace back combat sport to the dawn of time. Like, as soon as man started walking on 2 legs and like making fire, there you were. And again, like you said, with the Greco-Romans and the old style, like, I think you'd be hard pressed to find any kind of modern style of like combat sport that doesn't have elements of 15, 16 different kind of ancient styles, because fundamentally they're all built on the same kind of foundation. It all starts with kind of, this is your body and here's what your body can do, and here's that person's body and here's what you can do to it, and then it kind of builds from there, doesn't it? So but yeah, so like the British style, and then coming back to saying like the towns and how it built and spread over to the States. Traditionally, like the idea of professional wrestling, because between you and me, it's more of a show than it is a legitimate fight.
Mate, I tell you what, really?
Yeah, and again, so we'll talk a lot about kind of that American style, the punch. I call it the punch kick. So you have the punch kick style, which is kind of the big kind of the Attitude Era American wrestling, the Hulk Hogan stuff.
Yeah.
And that was very pantomime and obviously very, very obviously not real fight. And
Well,
it got
you
to the
say
point where,
that, but then there are still you still get your fair amount of people that are completely sold on it, and they're slightly terrifying. I've got to tell you, Dave. I've met a few.
yeah, people who believe it 100% are like scary, because if they believe in the fighting being 100% real, then the characters that you put out and the personas you take on, they believe in them. And they're the kind of people where if you're the bad guy, you got your way to be an arsehole, for want of a better term, they actually legitimately believe you are, and they'll treat you like one, and they'll
Oh
let
yeah,
you know you are one.
Dave. Believe it or not, Rayne, I actually covered this briefly on my interview with him I've just done. And Ray, in his dark and distant past, did some pro wrestling. And he had an incident where, he was wrestling in some working man's club, smoke up to the waist, like it used to be. Like when my early boxing career started, doing a working man's club north of England. And it's like someone's left the dry ice machine on all night because I was just setting the scene. And halfway through, because Ray was playing the heel, as the industry term goes, and some old lady ended up taking her stiletto off and trying to get in the ring and trying to brain him with it. Had to be restrained halfway. So, yeah, there is that terrifying element to it. But also, one thing I will also point out, I've competed in, like, literally, I can only guess because I don't have an accurate record and I wish I did. I've done about 40 professional fights on the various rules of kickboxing, mixed martial arts, one K1 bout, one bare knuckle bout, a ton of unlicensed boxing. Yeah, I've done done competitive catch wrestling in tournaments and in one-off super bouts and things like that. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, you name it. About the only thing I haven't competed in my natural life is probably like, I don't know, thumb wrestling. I'm pro wrestling, but we'll get back to that and put that right. Point being, I also do a lot of stuff for TV and film. And the point I'm getting to is, whereas what I do on screen is pre-arranged, it's entertainment, yeah. And what you do is entertainment. There are certain things, guys, as the cliche goes, that you cannot fake gravity. I assure you, right? I've been thrown legitimately in MMA bouts, picked up and slammed, and I've been picked up and slammed, in music videos or on, films and TV and things. It feels just the same. Okay, on the film, the TV, I've probably got some padding on, or maybe not, depends on the scene. If you want you bare-chested, then man up. Yeah. But it still takes a phenomenal amount of physical skill, of time, more so in many ways. Got to have a lot more control if you're doing it as a performance, because you don't actually want to murder the person that you are on screen with or in the cage with, or And like I said, those falls, they hurt just the same. Gravity is gravity. That doesn't change. Whether it's consensual or not, it's happening,
Absolutely, and that's so yeah, with like in a more legitimate kind of combat sport, that the person you're fighting is like, they're punching you, kicking you for real. They're legitimately trying to hurt you to win. But then, like how many professional fights does someone have in a year, for example? Whereas like as a professional wrestler, no, the person I'm in the ring with, I'm not trying to hurt them. I don't want to hurt them. And I'm sure as like a professional fighter, once the match is over, unless the person you're with, you're fighting against is, a certain unlikable sort, you don't want to walk away from a professional fight thinking that guy's not going to fight again for God knows how long. Like it's a sport, and you want to, I'm sure there's like a
there's a code, there's ethics, in an MMA bout, or a submission wrestling bout, whatever. You apply a submission, you apply it sharper than say you would when you were training, but you don't usually pop the damn thing on 110%. It's like an unspoken code that you give the guy a little bit of an opportunity to tap out and say, you know what, you got me there. I mean, don't get me wrong, if he throws that opportunity away, then snap it, because screw you. But I mean,
you're there to win. He's there to win. You both know they're there to win, and it's it's an opportunity that, like, look, I've got you. I've got you. Are you gonna admit it? Are you got to admit it? Right. Well, then I'm gonna have to make you admit it. And I get that completely. But because the point I was going to with the wrestling was that, so you're not really kind of hitting each other, but the slams are as stronger and as full force as there would be in a real fight, because they have to be. But for example, at the height of my wrestling career, I think I had 25 matches in 1 month. 1 month. And those were anything from like 10 to 25, 30-minute bouts, depending on what I was doing. So yeah, like the whole point I was coming to is that even with like the style, like the British style of wrestling was designed to be just easy, well, feel more real. So the American stuff is what we could term the American wrestling stuff, the WWE stuff. That was very much like, yes, we know, everyone knows that. Yeah, if anyone who knows Santa isn't real knows this isn't real. It's a show. So let's make it big and exciting and dramatic and do big this and big that and whatever. But that old British style of wrestling that we developed up, and wrestling in general, was actually designed to be convincing, because at first people didn't know. And you're saying about kind of the miners at the time and how they realized they could make more money out of the fights. The idea of professional wrestling, even if you look at the outfits people wear and stuff, it's all based on the old circus strongmen. So you used to have these they used to have back in like kind of the Victorian era and then 10th century, you have these big like traveling circuses, and every circus would have a strongman. And then to make your strongman more interesting, he'd be from like darkest Africa, or like, like mysterious Turkey or something like that, and some ridiculous overblown backstory. And then you'd have these traveling circuses, and then some way, somehow, this conversation was starting in people's bars and pubs and towns and stuff. Oh, I went to this circus and I saw this strongman. Oh my God, he'd rip your head off. Oh, that's nothing compared to this guy I saw. And the people running these carnivals realised this. And they realised they could make some money getting the strongmen to fight each other. So they had to fight, because they get the strongmen to fight. But then they realised that one of them was going to get battered and not be able to do anything. Like, someone's going to lose. And then maybe you could have another match 6 months' time when they've recovered. So I tell you what, no, here's what we'll do. We'll go in, we'll do this. And they used to go into pubs with so they send a strongman and his manager into a pub to chill out. And then the other travelling circus, the strongman and his manager would show up. And they'd get into a tussle on purpose in the pub. And then they'd be like, you want to sort this out? Right, we'll meet you at this place at this time. Everyone can come and watch. Place your bets now. And then they'd be like, right, and that's what it was. It became a big con. And for decades, it was these guys traveling circuses and stuff like that being like, it'd be a big con. And then it became, one of the traditions was like you could get members of the public would get in to fight the strongman and stuff like that. And it would be like, you get the strongman in, you get people in, and you kind of, if you could last X amount of minutes with him, but there'd always be a plan. There'd always be a plan in there, and it would be kind of depending on what they wanted to do, but normally the plan would get in, and it'd be someone that you wouldn't think would ever win. And then he manages to beat the strongman. But obviously everyone's seen the strongman beat everyone, so everyone's bet on the strongman. Then the kid wins all the money. Turns out he actually works for the booth, if you call the wrestling booth.
Yeah.
So it was all a big con, but a lot of it was based on that kind of that catch can wrestling style, and that was because, again, it was designed to be low impact. It's hard to fake a punch without leaving a bruise, but all that grappling and the rolling and the pulling and the playing the holds and making people tap out and stuff, like that was all designed to stand up to scrutiny. And so that's why like British wrestlers in particular have a great reputation around the world of being like really good proponents of the technical wrestling style. And Doug, to come back to kind of where this all started, was like the guy for that for a long time. And now in modern wrestling, they've got all these guys popping up. You've got Jack Gallagher, who's from Manchester. He's a guy that came from the school, and he's wrestling in WWE in 205 Live, which is their kind of cruiserweight division now. And he's like, again, he's somebody who's taking that British flag, that catch can style. He's trained at the Snake Pit in Wigan. Take on that very seriously.
That Billy Robinson's old place.
Yeah, so he trained at Billy Robinson's old place.
Actually, before he passed away a few years ago, it was fantastic. I mean, when I trained with him, it wasn't for the pro wrestling aspect. It was for the competitive catch wrestling for MMA. But obviously, I've seen Billy's pro stuff, and I love that as well. And he's got a mega name. I mean, he then went on. He opened up. I think he was teaching in Japan when he taught Sakuraba, the Gracie Killer. He worked with Josh Barnett a lot. So I mean, he has like a deep history in both the pro ranks and the catch ranks and the MMA scene as well. And he did have,
the guy's got an impeccable legacy, you know.
Well, Jack
You got
started there. Yeah, that's interesting.
like he just like for example with Jack, he used to tell people Jack's trained at the Snake Pit. People like right straight away credibility, credibility right there. So yeah, he's done that. He did some MMA fighting over in the UK just before he got his WWE contract offered to him. He had a couple of pro bouts, was doing pretty well. There's a guy from Scotland called Noam Dar, who again is like,
yeah,
he's a fantastic guy, and he's again another kind of like got a good strong base in that technical wrestling. Then you got like Zack Sabre Jr., who's kind of he doesn't work for WWE, but he's like you talk to anybody who's like a big wrestling fan who follows it, particularly in Japan, and he's considered like one of the best of like the modern era. And so there's this whole world of professional wrestlers from the UK now who are kind of just being seen as being, up on this pedestal and being seen as the equals. When from the late 90s through the early 2000s, the UK wrestling scene was like it was borrowed glory. It was all pretending to be the guys because the average punter on the street knows what they see on TV. You know. Yeah.
You got Drew McIntyre, Scottish, first British heavyweight.
Drew.
Now, so that shows a change in the time. There's so many points we just touched on that I want to sort of come back to there. So very quickly, firstly, you were talking about training and pedigree, and we've talked about how you've inherited the school, but who was it that actually sort of that trained yourself, Dave, predominantly?
First it was a guy called Alex Shane, who we spoke about really. I started off up in Wigan at a school called GPW, Garage Pro Wrestling. And Alex had kind of a hand in helping set that up. And that was run by a couple of guys who kind of very much kind of in keeping with that time were people who were, I would call enthusiastic amateurs. Because there was a big hole in kind of the provision for learning how to do this stuff.
Yeah, that's why I'm so interested as to how you actually got into it, because it wasn't a common thing, No,
not at all. You obviously kind of run like a school yourself, your MMA and stuff, and you find that there are kind of kickboxing classes and jiu-jitsu classes kind of popping up everywhere. And then obviously if someone wants to take it really seriously, they kind of know where to go for that as well. So you might find someone wanders in to a gym somewhere and they join like a couple of classes for jiu-jitsu, and then they kind of get the bug, but they'll end up going to somewhere a bit more focused if they want to move on to like competitive fighting. But with wrestling, there just isn't that kind of grassroots level entry into it as a discipline, let alone as a sport or anything like that. So yeah, at the time it was more kind of a couple of guys up in the Northwest wanted it, but knew that it wasn't sustainable to go away to London, and the FWA school at the time was in Portsmouth, so go all the way down there all the time to learn. Likewise, there was an NWA school, NWA Hammerlock, which was operating.
I remember seeing them featured on a program. There was a Channel 4 program years ago called Faking. It was brilliant, where you get someone from a completely different background and what have you. And there was one chap who was a ballet dancer and he taught to be a pro wrestler, and that featured Hammerlock Wrestling. And I cottoned onto that straight away. I loved that. But it was, I've heard of them. They were good guys.
They have a Cornwall kind of way.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of, like it's one thing to be passionate about something and be able to make sacrifices. But it's not a sustainable, you can't sustain chasing something as a full-time career if you have to travel 200-300 miles just to get an afternoon's training in it. Like it's difficult. So these guys were like, help us, get us a ring, get us set up. You've taught us enough, we're safe. So these guys in the garage were running it. But there was a lot of people who weren't necessarily happy with how it was being run. So they approached Alex at the time and were like, we found a facility in Manchester. Could you do the same for us that you've done in Wigan and help us set up? And he was like, yeah, no problem. And then Alex ended up taking kind of full-time control of the Manchester school for maybe 18 months. And then again, it was unsustainable for him to keep going up from London. So he was like, right, I either shut it down because no one wants to, or someone looking directly at me at the time. Because at this point, I'd finished college a few years. I was one of the older guys that was going regularly. I had a job. I was working in Asda, nothing particularly glamorous. I had a job, I had some money coming in, but it left me with kind of evenings free. So I was like, right, well, my evening's free and I've got one weekend day free, I can make this work. So I started doing that part time. And for like maybe a year, I was teaching a class, getting paid a small wage, and all the money was being sent down to Alex because he ran the business. After about a year of doing it, he was doing pretty well at his other stuff. I was like, this is, for me, a side job. For you, it's everything. So I'll tell you what, let's consider the last year you've worked for me, your dues, and give me the money for the ring, and the rest of it's yours. Off you go. So I had some money saved up, so I bought the ring off him, and yeah, I kind of just took over. And at that point, I quit my job. I was running school full time.
Awesome.
We were running shows a couple of times a year where guys who were learning at the school got to go get in a ring in front of a paying crowd. At that point, it was mainly kind of other wrestlers, friends, and family who'd come to support them. So I get to do my wrestling thing, mum. Do you and your mates want to? Yeah, send us a few tickets. And I was like, right, no, we need to make this sustainable. We need to do something. We need to grow. So we started doing real advertising. We started pushing. We went from 60, 70 people at an event every couple of months to like kind of the height of it for me when I was running it. We ran the Royal Northern College of Music as a venue in the city centre.
Okay.
500 people there. We had the place out. That was as many as we could have and have all the equipment in. We were running a place called the Longfield Suite. Again, that was like 500 Presswich, yeah. So they run a lot of kind of boxing and kickboxing events and stuff there as well. We're running that monthly at one point, So like we ended up. There was 1 year I think I ran 21 events over the year with the guys. So my head was spinning, and that was kind of all over the northwest. So we ran in Macclesfield, we ran in Stockport, we ran in Warrington, we ran in Blackburn, we've run shows Presswich in the city centre. So it's kind of grown from there. And it was all with one thing in mind, and that was just to create a platform for people who want to learn how to do this, to be professionals, not just hobbyists, because for a long time, British wrestling was propped up by people. It was their weekend job. They'd work, they'd be a surveyor Monday to Friday, and then Friday night, get in the car, drive to a show, be a wrestler Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then go back to work. Back to stacking shelves.
I mean, back in the 70s, obviously it was a different game then. You had millions and millions tuning in to watch World of Sports, Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks,
Big day wrestling, yeah.
And obviously the ones that I loved that came out, obviously you had Davey Boy Smith, who became the British Bulldog in WWE, absolute legend. Dynamite Kid, obviously the two of them, Tommy Billington and him as the British Bulldogs tag team. Spectacular and like well ahead of the time, and Mark Rollerball Rocco, and there was some serious talent around there, and it did used to draw serious numbers. Then it kind of plummeted. Then, like you said, sort of the WWE caught on fire over here, but British wrestling was very much passé. It was knockoff. It was bloody blah. Then you've had this sort of resurgence, and now obviously you've got WWE UK, and I wonder what your thoughts on this were, because like sort of WWE's global outreach, because to me, from an outside point of view, it looks like it's really lit a fire under everything, and it looks great because, I mean, I've seen half the current WWE UK roster on your shows in the past, yeah? And I know you've personally worked with some of the absolute legends of the sport. I'm definitely coming back to that in a minute, Bam. Your show and your company was Future Shock, wasn't it? And then you ran that for a long time. You've sold it, but you still got close ties and you act as a bit of a consultant. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it got to a point where kind of, in terms of running a business, I'd hit all my personal goals. The business was going okay, but it wasn't bringing in as much as I would like it to.
I know.
In terms of kind of like, amount of time and hours I was putting into it versus what I was taking out of it wasn't a great balance. So I sat down and I had a real kind of think about what I wanted to do. And I realized that one of the things that the company needed was somebody who was running it with passion. Passion first, profit second. And having hit all my goals, I didn't really have the kind of passion that the up-and-comers needed from someone who was leading the way. So I was like, right, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to explore some other avenues. So I sold the company on. And for a little while, I completely stepped back. Mainly because the gentleman who took over from me, when I was around, it always kind of felt like I was looking over his shoulder. Like it's hard for him to be the boss when Dave's looking over his shoulder, and people would like kind of, they'd have a problem or want to ask a question, and they just come to me still rather than him and stuff. And it wasn't good for kind of the company and kind of, because there has to be that chain of respect.
Of course.
So I was like, you know what, no. And so I stepped back, and I didn't even attend the Food Show for nearly 3 years at one point. Still kept in touch with everyone. You can't be in that industry and not make lifelong friends. So I was still in touch with everyone, still following everyone, still quietly just kind of pleased what everyone was doing. And then recently, the company's changed hands again. And the gentleman who now owns it, a guy called Damien, is somebody who's remained a very close friend. And he came to me and said, I've been offered it. I'm not going to take it unless you're involved. And it's just because, again, he was around. He started off just helping stuff years ago. Was someone who thought they wanted to be a wrestler, decided he'd rather be involved in the business side of the business, and kind of ran with it from there. And he's like, right, I want you to be involved. I was like, okay, but I don't want to run it. I don't want to this, don't want to, I want to just kind of help. So he got one of the guys, a guy called Sam Bailey, and he runs the day-to-days now.
Oh, yeah.
Sam was a guy who's been around since, not day one, because he's a little bit younger, but definitely day two. He's been around for a long time. He knows the score, and he loves the place. So he's running it. And I'm basically have the glorious title of creative consultant. Nah. And it's more kind of, that just means a jack of all trades. So wherever anyone wants to run an idea, there's a guy who maybe needs a little bit more work, or some, so you got two guys who are going to have a wrestle a match. Maybe they're both a bit green, or they're not quite getting what we want out of the match. Dave, go and talk to him and kind of oversee the match, because you have something called an agent. So again, like the point of a wrestling match is to tell a story beyond just guy A and guy B both want to win. There's a bit more of a story there, because ultimately, and the main difference between pro wrestling and kind of a legitimate fight is that the goal isn't to win, it's to entertain. And that's kind of the crux of the difference between like a legitimate sport and wrestling. That's why, like, in a legitimate sport, you could go out and knock a guy out in 13 seconds. And it'll be considered like one of the greatest moments. People will spend all night, they'll spend hundreds of dollars like to go to a fight. They've watched like a whole bunch of fights waiting for this main event, and the guy comes out, knocks the guy out in 13 seconds, and everyone's just like, wow, I was there. But if that happens in the main event at a wrestling show, everyone's going to be like,
yeah,
what have I spent my money on?
What just happened? Yeah.
What did I spend my money on? And like WWE have done that. There was a WrestleMania a couple of years ago. Daniel Bryan
and Sheamus.
That's who it was.
And it was 8 seconds, yeah.
And it was like, bam, kick, done. And I remember at the time, like, it was an amazing moment. And at the time, it was a big debate, because a lot of us, like, a bunch of us know Sheamus because he's from the UK.
Yeah.
And Daniel Bryan did lots of wrestling over in the UK.
Did you on your couch one time, Dave?
So yeah, he's been around the house, took my dog for a walk and stuff like that. He's not always been a vegan. I made him a nice chili and stuff like that. So we hung out. He's a really great guy. But so when I was saying earlier about kind of how British wrestling was on the back legs in terms of kind of, the only way you could get any real work was to these holiday camps. The other side of it is, in America, for example, there are a lot of indie promotions, because one of their states is the size of one of our countries, so there's a lot more work. But it was very much like a weekend job. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if you're lucky. Not a lot happens in the week. There wasn't so your individual match payday was maybe a little bit more, but the number of matches you could get, maybe not. And if you wanted to really get good at your kind of, like I was saying about that, the British style, you want to come and wrestle in the UK. So guys like Daniel Bryan, Colt Cabana, people like that, they would come over. They would fly. No, often they would fly themselves over to the UK to spend 3 months working for a guy called Brian Dixon, who runs called All Star Wrestling. He has a lot of the contracts for the holiday camps, because that guy would come over, maybe pay for his flight over to come and work, and he would do 50 matches in 2 months. Get 50 matches under his belt, 2 months, working in front of a live crowd, a very casual crowd. And if you can win a casual crowd over, you can win anyone over.
Right. Now, this is what I want to get onto there. There's several points here. I want to talk about storytelling, and I want to talk about storytelling both in terms of, firstly, in terms of the promotion. Now, you mentioned how it sort of came about. It was a legitimate con to start with, but that kind of, but they had hit on something there, which is, creating a story around their characters, creating characters. This is what human beings respond to. And, you know, you look at modern day sports promotion, particularly the UFC. I mean, Dana White, I think, openly admits that he nicked stuff from Vince McMahon in terms of the way he promoted the fights. They have the on-camera interviews. So you're not just seeing two random bodies in a cage beating the snot out of each other. You've got a backstory. You've got, all of a sudden, I've got a reason to care. Yeah. Because you've involved me emotionally. Now, when we're doing, I had a great conversation with Rayne, and this is one of the things I love about him as a fight choreographer. He's brilliant at physical storytelling, you know. And again, this is how me and Ray ended up talking about wrestling. But I think it was from a Chris Jericho book, and he was talking about when he was fighting down in wrestling down in Mexico, doing lucha libre, which is massively acrobatic, hugely physically impressive style. But the crowd was just flat as a pancake, and no one gave a damn until it was one of the characters who I think is more of a sort of a hero type character, decided to use a low blow to get an advantage. And all of a sudden the place lit on fire because he'd acted out a character. And also, I'm not being funny, like I say, you know, a kick in the balls means something to a man the world over. You know, whether you're in Manchester or Timbuktu, it's like, we all know what that's about. And it suddenly, the crowd was absolutely into the match. And I have this as a bugbear in martial arts movies and action movies when I see, you know, 50,000 flips and trips and kicks and what have you. But there's not an awful lot of feeling, and to me, there's not an awful lot of authenticity. You know, I've had like 300 odd competitive bouts, which sounds ridiculous, but I started when I was 8 years old in 1987. So it's less than 10 fights a year. You know what I mean? So it's perfectly legit. But I've got all that real life experience, and then I've got the film, TV, choreography experience as well. So when I watch a martial arts movie, it has to be something pretty damn special to make me go, oh yeah, or to hook me and really pull me in. And I see a lot of stuff, even the massive budget Hollywood stuff, where they're flying all over the place. And I don't really care that much because we're all, you know, I'm not so desensitized. I do it. I can get more of a feel, more of a vibe for what's going on, and I have more respect because I've been there and I have that experiential perspective to draw on. But the general public is completely desensitized. You're bombarded with social media, quick hit stuff. You're seeing explosions and car chases and ridiculous acrobatic feats and fight scenes left, right, and center. You know, we're force fed it. And so it comes back to that good old fashioned basic sort of concept of make people care. So there was the storytelling side in terms of the promotion, but then there's the physical storytelling in a match. And also what I'd like to talk about is what I do predominantly, and you've done a little bit. You came on the Village season 2 for BBC, and you did a bit with us. We'll come back to that in a minute because that was awesome. But what I predominantly do is it's on screen. Now, it might get seen by millions of people, but you might have 20, 30 people on a set, and they're largely going about doing the thing, doing their job. And really, you're just there, you're doing you. And even when I was a legitimate combat sport competitor, not necessarily finished yet, Dave, might get 1 or 2 out of me before I'm on that one-way trip to the glue factory, we'll see. But the point being, I could be in an arena full of thousands of people, but they were just there. My purpose was to win the fight, to do my thing. It wouldn't matter if I was high as a kite, if I was depressed as hell. It doesn't matter what's going on in my personal life because I'm there to do me, so I just switch on. But when it's performance in front of a live crowd, yeah, and your whole gig, like a stand-up comedian or a live rock band, your whole sort of reason for being there is to draw a response from them. Now, that's a tough thing. I honestly, this is why I played in bands as a teenager and things like that. And I've done some live stunt shows and things like that. But generally, I wouldn't like to make a career of something where I've got to go out there, face a live audience, and my whole reason is to draw a response, is to get their approval or disapproval or whatever it is, but get a reaction and connect. It's the connection. It's like, on a good day, I'd do that all day. I'd be happy as Larry. On a bad day, you got to stick a mask on and do it anyway. And that's where the professional aspect comes in, I guess. So I've given quite a lot of colour there, but really what I want to know is, what are your personal thoughts on, say, physical storytelling with inside of wrestling? Any particular stories of your own or particular favourite examples? And how do you personally prepare to face like a live crowd? And you know, have you got any specific sort of tips or anything, or do you just sort of assume a character like a character actor and switch off? How does it work for you?
So for me, I had a character, and with all good characters, it obviously draws on kind of aspects of who you are anyway. It's hard to pretend to be someone completely different 24/7, and particularly like in a traditional sense with wrestling, that's who you have to be. I'm Dave Pownell, and Dave Rayne was my wrestling persona. But then when it came to things like social media, Facebook, interacting with the crowds and stuff, what I put out there was just Dave Rayne the whole time. It's not the same as being an actor like Vin Diesel, you know, and like, I mean, to be fair, it's probably not the best example because Vin Diesel's the same guy in every film he's in. But like, you have Vin Diesel, and you know that the person on the screen is Vin Diesel playing a character.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
There's always that extra kind of level of depth. So Vin Diesel can go and do his role, go home, go onto his social media and just be Vin Diesel. And talk about the things that Vin Diesel likes and be the person he is, and then he goes and becomes the character. But with wrestling, especially connecting with a crowd, that's who they think you are. So we spoke earlier, you know, about like some of the crazies who believe it's real and they believe you really are that person. But a lot of the time, that's kind of what you put out there. All my social media when I was an active performer was Dave Rayne. It wasn't Dave Pownell who plays Dave Rayne. It was just, that's who I was as far as anyone's concerned. And what I put out there was a lot of him. So I kind of, he was always there in the back of my head anyway. So like, and there was this kind of two sides to him. I always think the best wrestling, well, with wrestling, you see, you have what's called a gimmick.
Yeah.
But you also have a character. And a lot of people, they kind of put them together, but they're not. They're two different things. So a gimmick is what you are, but your character is who you are. So Doink the Clown, the classic pro wrestling gimmick.
Yeah.
He was a big clown. He was a clown. That's what he is. He's Doink the Clown. He's a clown. But who he is completely different, because Doink the Clown doesn't necessarily have to be a bad guy or a good guy. Yeah. Doink the Clown doesn't have to cheat. Doink the Clown doesn't have to be a coward. Doesn't have to be brave. Doesn't have to be full of fire. Doesn't have to be depressed. Doink the Clown is a clown. But then if he's a good guy, he's going to be full of fire and he's going to win the right way. And if he's Doink the Clown, the bad guy, then he's going to cheat. He's going to run away from people, and he's going to be a bit of a snake. Yeah. And that's your character. That's two different things. So the gimmick of Dave Rayne was always a bit of a party boy Dave. So in my early wrestling, I was a good guy, and I always kind of was like, right, so I want to be a bit of a party boy. I want to come out and have like dance music and be upbeat and stuff like that. And I was like, so how can I kind of personify that? And I was thinking, I was on that out and I was looking around, and I realised that there was this guy who used to go to the Ritz in Manchester a lot on a Monday night. The Ritz.
Yeah, I was there a lot. Yeah, go on.
And there was always this one guy there, and no one knew his name, and he never seemed to be with anyone. But he was always the first one dance floor dancing.
You haven't basically counted on me, have you, mate? Just checking. It definitely
might be. Did you have long hair?
Yeah, I did. We'll talk about this afterwards. All right, carry on.
He was there every week, and he never seemed to be with anyone. Like, there was no group that he was with. He was always the first one dancing, and he kind of knew everyone to say hi to. And everyone knew him to say hi to. And everyone who went there knew of him. But no one knew him. And it was like, he's just there to have a good time. Whatever's going on, he's there just to have a good time. Whatever else is going on in his life, when he comes to the Ritz, even if he comes on his own, he's there to dance, listen to some music, and smile. And you could see, he was this guy, and like, he was always just so happy to see everyone. Even though you probably didn't know their name, no one knew his. He'd be like, you're right, that. I was like, that's who I'm going to be in the wrestling ring, as a good guy. I'm going to be there to have a good time. And that was my persona was like, I'd always come out to the ring like a bit dancey, a bit upbeat, really happy to be there, like happy to see everyone. And then I'd get in the ring and I'd be like it'd be very sportsmanshipy and very kind of like, I'm here to have a good time, and a bit cheeky chappy and a few jokes and stuff, and like a few silly little bits of like wrestling where like you trick the guy into going the wrong way, and you pop up behind him and wave, and he'd be like, "What you doing?" and chasing you around. But it'd always be kind of good natured, because I like that, because it gets people on board. They you know, they're kind of enjoying the fun of it. And then when that other person gets frustrated and does something unfair, so a low blow, or distracts the ref, or pokes you in the eye, or just even a close, like you've been doing, hold for hold wrestling for 5 minutes, and I've put you in a headlock, and you've fought your way out of it, and you've put me in a top wrist lock, and I've like, you know, I've dug deep and I've found a way out of it, and I've done all this clever wrestling. And after 5 minutes of this clever back and forth wrestling, if the other guy loses his rag, loses his patience, and he resorts to the first punch, oh, what a disappointment he is.
Yeah.
What, you know what I mean? And that's boo. And that was my character. My character would always be like, he'd get hit and he'd be like, oh, all right, is that the way it is then? Okay, and off we go. You know, and then when he gets back on top.
It's about tempo changes, isn't it? Quite a lot, because that's no different on film. It's like you kind of lull people into a pace, and then you change something, and it might just be as simple as with a lot of the choreographed fights. Even though you watch the Jackie Chan primetime Jackie Chan, there's a rhythm to it. It's bah, 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 bah. It's like that, but then suddenly, a quick way of getting people's attention is to change that rhythm up. So all of a sudden, instead of like the normal rhythm, there's like a bah, like there's a sudden explosion in the fight, and everyone goes woof, and then straight away again, that's one way of drawing them in.